Hindi ito yung bloodbath na inaasahan namin. Umaasa sila na through technicality, makakalusot si Vice President Sara at i-dismiss na ito.
Ako yung client. May sarili akong gusto. Meron akong mga abogado. Siyempre nagbabayad ako sa kanila. Gusto ko ng bloodbath. Pero iba ang gusto ng mga experts and sila yung binabayaran ko. Ayaw kong magsunog ng pera.
Vice President Sara Duterte finally makes her move on the political chessboard, asking the Senate Impeachment Court to dismiss the case against her. Overseas, a flicker of hope as Israel and Iran agree to a ceasefire. But the world holds its breath. Will the fragile truce last? And back home, could we see the same calm in the storm of political infighting at the highest levels of government? I'm Stanley Palisada, and this is the Weekend Wrap. After nearly 2 weeks of deadly airstrikes between Iran and Israel, a ceasefire has finally been struck. U.S. President Donald Trump announced he brokered the deal, saying both parties agreed to a truce. But soon after, Israel launched another round of missiles, killing 9 according to Iranian officials.
You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what they're doing. Do you understand that?
Despite the faltering, the truce seemed to be holding. No sirens, no more strikes. Both sides acknowledged the ceasefire, with each claiming victory. Before the truce, Iran targeted a major U.S. military base in Qatar. The strike was seen as a direct response to Washington's bombing of Tehran's nuclear sites. Analysts say the ceasefire will only last if Israel and the U.S. drop any push for regime change in Iran.
If their objective now is to have a regime change in Iran, that's another matter. Because definitely they will keep on attacking Iran until the government is neutralized, and especially I'm inclined to believe that they are really after regime change. Of course, they would not deny it, but I think that is the objective.
Back home, the first batch of OFWs from the Middle East have been repatriated. Government says hundreds more want to return despite the ceasefire. The tensions also continue to hit close to home, especially at the pumps. Global oil prices surged over 4% earlier this week, hitting new highs. Local oil firms raised prices, but in staggered amounts to ease the pain. After the truce was announced, oil prices slipped, prompting President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. to hold off on fuel subsidy talks, insisting there's no immediate economic impact for now.
May effect siyempre kahit paano pag tumaas ang presyo ng langis. But even before our meeting, nag-announce na ng ceasefire, yung presyo ng langis bumalik sa dati. Subsidy, pag tumaas ang presyo. Kung di tumaas ang presyo ng langis, then there's no need for that. We can proceed, we can do business as usual. So far, there is no significant effect on the economy. Yun lamang binabantayan natin ngayon, yung price gouging.
But the Vice President disagrees with the President's actions. Sara Duterte slammed government's response on Middle East tensions, calling it too little, too late.
Too little, too late again. Dapat kasi the moment na nag-release na ng missiles or nag-launch na ng missiles ay meron ng plano kung ano ang gagawin para sa mga Pilipino na gustong lumikas. Hindi yung aantayin pa kung kailan sarado na yung borders, nawawala na yung nagka-cancel na ng flights, ang mga airspaces doon sa bansa na malapit sa kaguluhan. So, dapat kasi nagplano, hindi naman surprise yun.
She also took aim at the President's foreign policy, questioning why the Philippines is siding with the U.S. and allowing American weapons to be staged on Philippine soil.
Foreign policy. It is stated in our Constitution
that we should have an independent foreign policy. That do not lean to a foreign power, that do not favor US or do not favor China. We already won in the arbitral award. The only thing that you need to do is force the recognition and the implementation of the award through diplomatic channels. Hindi yung kikilingan mo ang isang foreign power, papapasukin mo ang mga missile ng foreign power sa bansa mo na alam mong kinaiinisan noong kalaban niya na wala ka namang kinalaman sa gitgitan nilang dalawa. That is not independent foreign policy.
The palace hits back, saying it's not surprising from a Duterte whose family has always been pro-China.
The president said, we expect that from the Dutertes because they are pro-China. At ang Pangulo po ay pro-Philippines.
VP Duterte also defended her recent trips abroad to the Netherlands, Malaysia, and Australia. She says all are personal.
Hindi ko alam kung sinasadya nila na ayaw intindihin o talagang bobo lang talaga yung nasa administrasyon. I'd likely lean doon sa latter. Nilalagay namin doon personal to differentiate it from official. Kasi pag personal, hindi ako gumagamit ng pera ng bayan. Pag official, gumagamit ako ng pera ng bayan. Hindi ibig sabihin na personal na lakad yan ay holiday o pamamasyal yan.
Now, speaking of former President Rodrigo Duterte's case, International Criminal Court prosecutors formally opposed his camp's push for his temporary release. Duterte's lawyers claimed a country has already agreed to receive him. But prosecutors insist Duterte has the ability to interfere with and intimidate witnesses if released.
It clearly shows that the Duterte camp has the proclivity to propagate disinformation and to twist the either facts and information. And now the prosecution has that first-hand experience. Nicholas Kaufman, the defense, appears to have presented to the pretrial chamber a different proposal altogether. And instead of even citing that particular country where they had already made discussions about conditions, the defense raised and put in a different country altogether. So, kumbaga, sa Pilipino, parang ino-onse mo ako na, bato, iba yung pinag-usapan natin, iba yung sinasabi mo ngayon sa korte.
Justice Secretary Jesus Crispin Remulla agrees, saying it's best for Duterte to remain detained at The Hague. The Justice Department is also now providing protection to at least 3 witnesses in the crimes against humanity case of Duterte.
Is it practical or necessary to get him released to another country? I don't think that it is an appropriate request. I think that the case should be heard as soon as possible, and that there may be more harm than good that will come out of it if that request is granted by the court. And the court itself knows that it took a lot to be able to bring him before The Hague, before the ICC, and it's not going to be easy to bring him back in case they lose possession of him or custody of him. So I think it's better that we just hear the case with him present in the proceeding. They have gone to our witness protection program to secure the people who may be needed to testify in The Hague. And so we have given our support and cooperation, as this request is a well-founded request based on the safety, based on the necessity to bring the witnesses safely to The Hague.
Now, as the former president waits in detention, her daughter faces her own battle. She entered a not guilty plea in her impeachment case and moved to dismiss the complaint. In her defense, she says the complaint violates the 1-year bar rule for impeachment. But House prosecutors hit back, saying there's no valid basis to dismiss the case.
Hindi ho na-violate yung 1-year bar rule because yung tatlo na naunang impeachment complaint, hindi ho nakaabot doon sa referral to the Committee on Justice. Hindi ito yung bloodbath na inaasahan namin. Umaasa sila na through technicality, makakalusot si Vice President Sara at i-dismiss na ito.
Senate President Francis Escudero now claims any senator judge is free to file motions on the case even if it is to dismiss, acquit, or convict. And as usual, they can decide by majority vote.
Wala namang bawal ngang motion eh. Yun ang problema ko sa maraming nagsasabi ng kung ano-ano eh. Asan ba yung rule? Asan ba yung provision sa saligang batas o sa rules on impeachment na bawal ang ganito o ganyang klaseng motion? Always by simple majority. Simple majority ang kinakailangan sa lahat ng botohan. 2/3 ang kailangan to convict or acquit. But it begs the question, kung may simple majority ka to dismiss, for example, then imposible ka na maka 2/3. Hindi ba?
Correct.
It's simple math.
The House Prosecution Panel meanwhile submitted its compliance with the first of two requirements set by the Senate. The impeachment court earlier returned the articles of impeachment asking the House to certify that the proceedings followed the 1987 Constitution. That certification has now been filed. But one more requirement remains, a commitment from the 20th Congress, which will convene this July to pursue the impeachment case. On top of her impeachment, VP Duterte faces another legal issue. The House recently adopted a committee report recommending administrative, civil, and criminal charges over her alleged misuse of confidential funds in the OVP and DepEd. Just days later, the Ombudsman ordered Duterte to respond. While welcoming the move, House prosecutors warn the Ombudsman's surprising swift action could affect the impeachment trial.
Nagsimula na ang impeachment proceedings, nag-acquire na ng jurisdiction ang impeachment court. The ombudsman should await the outcome of the impeachment proceedings. Thus, the ombudsman should take a back seat and tignan niya yung ebidensyang ilalahad sa during the trial. So dapat bigyan ng pagkakataon ang impeachment court na nag-acquire na ng jurisdiction na isulong yung paglilitis hanggang ito ay matapos.
I'm perplexed why there is this intervention now by the Office of the Ombudsman. The Office of the Ombudsman has no jurisdiction at this point, has no investigative powers or authority at this point over the Vice President, who is an impeachable official. Ang medyo nagkukos sa akin ng agam-agam apprehension is the fact that what if the Office of the Ombudsman fast-track the preliminary investigation after receiving the counter affidavit and then would issue a ruling saying that the case lacks probable cause. Then definitely such a finding will be used by the defense team.
Meanwhile, a different kind of case returned to the national spotlight. Years after the disappearance of dozens of cockfighters, a key witness has come forward. Alias Totoy claims the missing sabongeros were killed and buried in Taal Lake. The Philippine Coast Guard is now preparing for a possible underwater retrieval operation. Justice Secretary Remulla says the total number of missing could top 100. He vows governments won't stop until justice is served.
Itong 34, ito lang yung talagang hinahanap ng mga pamilya at tuloy-tuloy na naghahanap sila. Kaya nagkaroon talaga ng interest ang estado rito. Pero actually, ito beyond areglo to eh. Hindi pwedeng areglo yung ganitong kaso. Mass murder to eh. Kaya mas marami sila. There are more than 34. There must be 100 of them.
Wow.
At ang nakikita ko lang talaga rito yung impunity ng may sala. Kasi sobrang dami ng pera nila. Parang nakakalimutan na nila na may halaga ang buhay ng tao. Kaya kailangan talaga ma-pursue itong kaso to. Alam mo, pag hindi natin ginawa ito, kawawa naman ang bansa natin. Parang pinabayaan lang natin na ang tao ay ipagpalit sa pera at ibaon sa limot.
And that wraps up this week's Top Stories. I'm Stanley Palisada. We'll catch you again next time for more of the latest headlines. Stay with ANC, the ABS-CBN News Channel. Never miss a story. Unlock exclusive access to uninterrupted streaming and premium news content. Subscribe to ANC 24/7 on YouTube and join ANC Prestige today.